Once upon a time, a miracle happened and a blue planet was born. This planet has gone through phases, some thriving with life, but also devastating mass extinctions. Today, it blossoms, supporting an array of different and unique species. Each form of life exists because of evolution and adaptation, fitting like pieces of a puzzle together to share the same home. Nature's flow filters from the sky and down through the ecosystems on land before flowing to the sea. Interwoven relationships have paved the way for millions of new species to follow. It's the symbiotic nature of sustaining a rich biodiversity. Many faces came and went, and then something very special happened. Humans were born. At a late stage of evolution, we have made our way into this Garden of Eden, planet Earth, and become a part of this magic web of life. Look at the most amazing forest I've ever seen. Look at that, it's just stunning. The circle of life is the ability to capture carbon dioxide and the process of photosynthesis. Trees, plants, seaweeds, and microorganisms such as bacteria all capture carbon. Energy from the sunlight means these mini factories transform water and atmospheric carbon dioxide into carbohydrates, creating organic matter and oxygen, essentially supporting life on Earth. A giant tree is the master of storing carbon, with centuries of exchange within its structure. Abundant forests have maintained equilibrium on Earth. But Earth's connections run deep. What happens on land is reflected within the largest ecosystem in the world. Imagine how your own body is similar to the planet, but on a much smaller scale. It is made up of trillions of cells all working together to create a living body that functions as one unit. Water covers about 70% of the Earth's surface, about the same amount of water you have in your body. 6 elements make up almost the entire human body mass: oxygen, carbon, hydrogen, nitrogen, calcium, and phosphorus. All of these elements, and several others, make up the Earth as well.
Have a nice day.
Our bodies regulate a precise temperature at all times, just like Earth, even though it's floating in space at sub-zero temperatures. Equatorial rainforests function as the planet's lungs, exchanging oxygen and carbon dioxide in concerns with the ocean. The atmosphere functions like a global respiratory system. The whole planet breathes by contracting and expanding with the moon's gravitational pull. The mountains act like cloud magnets, helping to create rain. This life flow of water over time has channeled pathways downward through the valleys and canyons, filtering into the creeks and rivers that act like veins, quenching the land of its thirst. Currents along with our rivers and streams are like a circulatory system, bringing clean water and movement. Our bodies and the earth depend on everything working together and flowing freely in order for this system to keep functioning. To change or block these pathways is to diminish the life source of our earth.
The rain is a blessing from Akua for all living things. We respect the rain, we welcome the rain. Life to our people, life to our land, life to the earth. You know, we're here today to see the injustice that is being done to our people, our Aina, our land.
So what is happening to your Aina, your land?
Well, a flume system, which we see here, completely diverts all the water from its natural flow to the ocean. People who've lived here many generations, Kanaka, they were totally dependent off of this water for their lo'i, or their taro farms. And after this flume system was put in, all of it dried up, and people were forced to leave their lands and forced to go to a modern way of living. Along these areas that they've put 60 miles of flume system, the coastal areas have been devastated. No algae, no marine life, completely gone.
The human body is an amazing, complex structure, but only allows us one perspective, our own. All of us believe we have the freedom to roam and feel the wind in our hair. Our eyes admire the beauty and colours around us. The world is our oyster, with gleaming pearls. But humans have risen up in a way that no other animal ever achieved. Instead of adapting to the world we live in, we are adapting the world to suit our species. We have now passed a tipping point. To understand how important symbiosis is in our body helps us understand we are also part of the magical symbiotic chain of life on Mother Earth.
more interested in each other than us.
I hope so. I don't want to be involved in that argument.
Biodiversity is the variety of all living things, from plants, animals, and microorganisms. It includes the genetic information they contain and the ecosystems they form. These three levels work together to create the complexity of life on Earth. It is estimated there are over 13 million species on Earth alive today. Each one has one thing in common. We rely on the same Earth and the same atmosphere. But it only works in a world where species coexist. An ecosystem requires all living things to work together to maintain a structure. But some species are crucial to the way all the species interrelate. "50 million years ago, the Earth would have been a much poorer place without bats. More than 1,300 species around the world consume vast amounts of insects, including some of the most damaging agricultural pests. Fruit-eating bats in the tropics disperse seeds that help restore cleared or damaged rainforests. Their droppings are also valuable as a rich, natural fertilizer.
White-bellied sea eagles, they're sitting on the tree branches. I can see one through here just watching all the bats. And every now and then the bats just go crazy, so I think they know that they're there.
Without bats' pollination and seed dispersing services, local ecosystems could gradually collapse as plants fail to provide food and cover for wildlife species near the base of the food chain.
And their proper name is a Vesperdelis trautoni. They were putting some new roadworks through, and of course the little bats were in the culvert. They got moved out of there, put out into a bat box that wasn't the ideal time to be doing it, and parents flew away and left the babies behind. So we're actually probably going to lose the whole 56, potentially more than that, because a lot of them are females. So you've lost their offspring as well. And although these guys are, you find them all up and down the eastern coast here, you're talking a vulnerable species here that you've just killed off. You've killed off the next couple of generations.
What's it like sometimes to look after all these animals and then you actually lose so many?
Oh, it's a bittersweet. And it's such a battle for them out there on a daily basis. When you work so closely and so hard, just recently, a lot because of all the adverse publicity that's been going on out there, makes our job all the harder. And I think it makes the heartache all that much harder as well to bear with a lot of people. But yeah, bittersweet. It's bittersweet.
But just as important as bats are to the ecosystem, so are insects. Wild pollinators, especially bees, have co-evolved with flowering plants over millions of years. The pollinators need the flowers for food, while the flower needs the pollinators to reproduce. Bees pollinate and increase the yields for many of the crops we grow for human consumption. But wild bees and insect pollinators also maintain the planet's ecosystems. Seeds, fruits and berries eaten by birds and small mammals are mostly from plants that are pollinated by insects, making them the guardian of the food chain. Other insects are also crucial. They aerate the soil, bite holes in leaves, and some beetles scavenge on dead animals and animal feces. These processes break down and recycle nutrients back into the soil, maintaining soil health for the bacteria and microbes to make the soil fertile. But today, insect populations are plummeting from habitat destruction, insect zappers, pesticides, and genetically modified foods. The bugs that maintain the health of the planet are in peril.
You smell the flowers.
The bees live up the hill there in that little pagoda.
I am at High Eco Farm, which is referred to as the Happy Farm. Now, I've come here because this is a farm where they're using natural organic farming methods to put nutrients back in the soil and really helping put good stuff back into our food source. But Mark, who owns this farm, is also highly aware of the dangers with genetically modified foods taking over. So he's going to tell me a little bit about what they're facing here in Maui. Mark, this is your fantastic garden. You've got 14 acres of it. What are some of the tasty treats that you've got scattered in here?
Well, this is just an edible hibiscus. So you can put it into a stir fry, and it's got all kinds of great nutrients in it. You can see it's got a lot of life force in it.
Good thing is you don't have to worry about me eating pesticides, right?
No, that's right. It's all organic.
That's great. I can pick a leaf and eat it. It's good.
And this is a papaya, of course. Mm-hmm. And there's some taro in here, but you have to wander around a bit to see it. Bananas, of course. Then we have fish in this part of the garden, and we grow the food for the fish, so it's all a pretty integrated system.
And then you said you don't worry too much about weeds because they're good. They really help the nutrients in the soil, and if you get sick of them, you just cut them down and feed them to the other plants.
That's right. Yeah.
It's awesome.
Here on Maui, we got 19,000 people to sign on a proposal to have a moratorium on the cultivation of genetically modified plants until they can prove that it's safe. In Europe, they use the precautionary principle. If there's any doubt, then prove that it's safe. Here in the United States, we use a risk-benefit analysis. We're willing to take risks and look and see what the trade-offs are. And the trade-offs are, it seems to me, profits for the company and pollution for the environment. So more and more evidence is coming in from around the world, from research scientists and medical practitioners who are studying the issues, that these things are clearly not safe and far more dangerous. There are 85,000 chemicals on the market, and 600 of them have been slightly tested. We have no idea. Newborn children, at least in this country, have over 200 chemicals in their blood when they're born.
Wow, that's a lot.
That should be headlines and should stop what we're doing right off the bat.
Well, I participated in an Aaron Brockovich-style investigation for many years overseas, and as I had dealt With the chemical company next door, I learned a horrific series of things. We discovered that New Zealand dairy farmers had been sold relabeled Agent Orange and worse for the better part of 50 years.
Do you think the average person realises the damage that chemicals can do not only to us as people, but to the surrounding environment?
No. Not only was the environment, the animals, and the shellfish affected, the people were affected tremendously. Lots of birth defects and cancers, way above the normal average. And for me, to go around Maui and see the tumors all over the turtles on almost every beach is just heartbreaking, because it screams pesticide poisoning. We know it's runoff from the rain. It's brought to very dangerous chemicals from making food, or sugar, or pineapple, down onto the beach. And the end result is the lemur gets poisoned, the turtle eats it, and some of the turtles are just horrific to look at.
Our primeval fear places sharks as the enemy. We portray them as cold-blooded and ruthless killers, the jaws of death. But should they earn this reputation? What the odd rogue shark does should not depict how we view an entire species. Sharks belong in our oceans. They have been there for 450 million years. Sharks clean up the sick, the unhealthy, the slow, or the unsuspecting. This helps control marine population and keeps equilibrium within our oceans. The entire reef system depends on sharks as an apex predator. Sharks have survived 5 mass extinctions and helped shape life today. Humans are consuming sharks and fish so quickly, we are depleting the ocean ecosystem that has taken millions of years to reach its current stage of species biodiversity. In the coming decades, millions of people may die from starvation as seas lose the sparkle of life. It makes our 1 in a billion chance of a shark attack more a media frenzy and a vengeful act, based from fear rather than any practical viewpoint.
So, Leif, these jungles that we've been roaming through in Sumatra are stunning, and there's so many birds calling and there's so many different sounds you hear, but you were saying there's some of the most biodiverse anywhere in the world.
Yeah, this is one of the biodiversity hotspots of the world, which is crucial to saving biodiversity on the whole planet. Not only that, the density of wildlife here is far beyond anything else.
But Sumatra is also one of the places that they're clearing faster than anywhere else for palm oil and for timbers.
Exactly, and the devastation here is at an exponential rate. And the orangutans have lost 80% of the habitat, and they're only down to 6,000 or so orangutans left alive. Wow. And that seems like a lot, but if you go to your average football game, they wouldn't even fit behind one goalpost in the stands, so, and they're fragmented in these small populations. So we really got our backs against the wall trying to keep the species going.
This area here, the national park here, has the world's largest orangutan population.
So Tanjung Puting.
Tanjung Puting National Park. So if we lose this place, then I don't think it can survive anywhere else.
Elephants are the largest land animals on the planet. When elephants eat, they prune the vegetation, increasing ecological complexity, creating gaps for new plants. The more they eat, the more they poop, providing forest fertilizers rich in nutrients like phosphorus and silicon, deposited throughout their large territories.
This doesn't get any better. Look, there's a little baby.
Led by an older female, known as a matriarch, elephants have complex social structures. The calves stay with the herd, generally females, while the males tend to live a more solitary life. Their need to roam large distances for food means more than ever they're coming into contact with humans as their habitat decreases.
I saw a couple of photos on the internet of two elephants that had been poisoned. Is that sort of in this area, or is that another area, or does that happen all the time?
That's actually this area here.
The reason why elephants actually get killed is because they raid crops, and people, the owners of these fields, it's their livelihood. So for them, it's very, very important to protect their crops. And the simplest way for them is just to poison or shoot elephants. Yeah?
Elephants are critically endangered, too much on elephants. Soon they will be disappeared from our world if we don't take action.
What we need to do is save the entire ecosystem, and that includes elephants, tigers, bears, but also the economic future of this country, as well as the indigenous communities and local tribes that use this area. So we have to take a holistic approach to our conservation here in Sumatra.
Tasmania contains 95% of Australia's cool temperate rainforests, with the Tarkine Wilderness having the largest uninterrupted tract of over 170,000 hectares. With cool temperate rainforests being so rare around our world, only New Zealand and southern South America holding any other decent tract, that means that the Tarkine Wilderness is of global significance, crucial for the stability of our world climate.
Well, at the time of British takeover of Tasmania, of course, the Tarkine extended everywhere. The whole of the island was wild. But nowadays, it's back to 450, 500,000 hectares with this incredible 100,000 hectares of intact, contiguous, all-in-one rainforest. These are ancient, wild, wonderful places. But they plan in the next 3 years 150 logging coops. Each of those is getting towards the size of a football field. Each of those is completely flattened and then burnt using napalm. When a firestorm comes, and the aim of logging in these forests is to afterwards create a firestorm, that's why they drop napalm on it, so hot that it burns everything down there as well to stop new plants, native plants, springing up and competing with their plantations. Now, all that carbon accreted here and making us safe from global warming over centuries is suddenly pulsed into polluting our atmosphere. The tragedy of Tasmanian logging is that when they clear fell log and then drop napalm, it goes up in massive amounts of greenhouse gases. But it goes up as carbon and from the floor of the forest, methane, which is a much more potent greenhouse gas. And you know what? They don't measure that. They aim to destroy all the native plants and the wildlife so that a monoculture or a culture of imported trees can grow there for their plantations for the future.
I think the tragedy here is looking around at the carnage that I see laying around me. When you're cutting down 800-year-old trees, you just don't get them back. I literally feel like I'm in the middle of a war zone. I mean, I can stand on a stump like this that's absolutely massive and know this is where a giant tree used to stand. And everywhere I look, giant trees have been felled and are laying in log piles. These are some of the most carbon-rich forests in the world. These are incredibly biodiverse places, but they've been reduced to this.
Well, according to one economist who hasn't been questioned by the logging industry, that's John Lawrence, the logging industry here has lost $1 billion since 2004. That's in Little Tasmania. Hundreds of millions of dollars of taxpayers' money, and that's Australian taxpayers, have been poured into this loss-making industry. Sell forests which cost it nothing to corporations to make money. It's economic madness. And adding to the acceleration of climate change, sea level rise, worse bushfires, more dangerous cyclones, droughts in our food bowl system. And of course, if they're logged, they make climate change worse. They put the penalty onto our grandchildren. That's the economic penalty that's coming with climate change.
Constant forest fires, controlled or not, eliminate millions of individual animals that play a role in maintaining climate equilibrium. Over time, this has helped dry out our climate, raise temperatures, and increase the risk of future fires. Mass extinction events correspond to periods of quickly changing atmospheric carbon dioxide. A rapid rise affects nature's ability to adapt. Two of the most complex ecosystems on Earth are the rainforests and reefs. The mixture of different species adds beauty to our world, and the connections of our ecosystems are complex threads. But as beautiful as life can be, there is also a fragility. To take this world of colour for granted is a dangerous game, a story our reefs are currently telling.
Yay, we're at Ashmore Reef. It's been a little bit blowy the last couple of days, so we had a bit of a bouncy ride out here, but now we're out here and we've got this beautiful atoll in the middle of nowhere in the Pacific Ocean that's just pretty much us and the ocean out there. Now, this is a pretty big area. There's lots of little small bommies, but there's also this line of reef that runs along here and the outside wall. Now we're going to try and hit the outer edge because that's sometimes where the big pelagics live. But this is really, really beautiful area. We're pretty much out on the extreme far reefs, out past the Great Barrier Reef. And these remote areas like this, you won't find anywhere more beautiful for clear water, pinnacles in the middle of the lagoon, and shallow lagoon diving.
Beneath the ocean, the reef ecosystem is full of many forms of life carrying on their daily lives. Some scrape corals and create sand. Others eat algae or feed on coral polyps. Even the dreaded crown-of-thorns starfish can work like a vacuum cleaner to clean up the reef. We don't understand all the complexities of life that have taken millions of years to evolve. But what we do know was the ecosystems used to work.
But while we've been diving, we have noticed there has been a lot of coral broken off the big staghorn corals. So there's been something has come through, whether it be an extreme weather event, whether there's some kind of poison in the environment, but it has caused a lot of these corals to die, and we're trying to piece together whether it's just our cycles of our oceans starting to change.
A healthy reef is a biodiverse reef. It is colourful, maintained by marine caretakers who know how to do this better than us. I can watch them work for hours, noting their roles, marvelling at their symbiotic relationships that they have formed. Seeing them patrolling the reefs looking for dinner, or even cleaning up after someone else's mess. Over time, certain species disappeared and the reef's health gradually declined. The impacts of biodiversity loss due to removal of apex predators or reef maintainers was constant, and it was hard to know exactly when the problem entered the red zone globally. But that continual decline has now resulted in ecosystem failure. The colour and beauty of yesteryear's reef is just a dream in my imagination. Most reefs these days are partially bleached, or even worse, have large amounts of algae and slime growing on them. While people blame crown of thorns or climate change, with less forest ecosystems and biodiversity maintaining carbon dioxide levels in the atmosphere, the more our oceans absorb carbon, creating carbonic acid and more acidic seas. And as the buildings got bigger, the rainforests and reefs disappeared. The true cost of progress.
One of the easiest ways to explain the urgency here is to consider what people call the carbon budget, which is how much CO2 left to emit to the atmosphere before we get into trouble, go beyond 2 degrees Celsius. That turns out to be around 700 gigatons of carbon dioxide that we can release into the atmosphere without having disastrous consequences. If you chop down forests, you really do lose enormous amounts of activity. Whereas the ocean, The organism that does all the heavy lifting is one of the smallest creatures on the planet, and it's phytoplankton. Putting aside the discussion that actually any CO2 is dangerous and we should be eliminating it from the atmosphere, you then go down to say, okay, well, let's think about the Galilee Basin that has all this coal that people want to dig up and ship overseas and burn. That takes up 2/3 of that carbon budget. The Great Barrier Reef finally being put into the grave. We have rain events that are just, you know, continue to climb. And it's the combination of all these things where we are no longer able to cope. I mean, you look at the frequency with which inundation along coastlines is going to increase just by sea level rise alone. And you're talking hundreds of times what we're seeing today. There are some really important feedback loops, you know, when it comes to the poles and the tropics. And as we see the, you know, sea ice in the Arctic and Antarctic disappear, we're reducing the amount of heat being reflected back into space. And of course, that then leads to more rapid warming, that every time you increase planetary temperature by 1 degree, you increase the amount of moisture incorporated into the atmosphere. So things are going up into the atmosphere with lots of water, and it's going equally across the planet. But then when you have a storm event, all that water then concentrates and comes streaming down. And of course, what we've seen in South Asia, the Caribbean, the southern United States is a consequence of those warmer conditions, that we're sort of underestimating the amount of change going on. We're being caught off guard because the science has been conservative. So then you go forward in time and you say, what's going to happen next? Well, we can probably control the pollution and do our best to sort of manage fisheries and so on. But, you know, what about the climate thing? And it turns out that unless we take very, very deep cuts in emissions starting today, reefs like the Great Barrier Reef are going to be poor resemblances of themselves if they exist at all. I think we just have to engage with the solutions. You know, we've got to put our boots back on and jump back in and solve the problems, and we can. I mean, the cost of getting to a good climate outcome is a few % of GDP growth globally over the next 50 years. Once we can stabilise the environment, then species can shift and move into the right circumstances and re-flourish.
It's only a small number of people who changed the world. That's all that ever did. Think of the suffragettes, the people who led to the abolition of slavery, for example. They went against the tide of their times, but now we thank them for what they did. It's the same with the global destruction of the biosphere, our living environment at the moment. We need to change the whole way the world thinks in this consumerist society which is eroding that environment. And that begins with you and I.
So we're pulling into the Port of Mackay, and it's a bit of a reality check because behind me, literally, I can count over 30 plus coal, massive tankers just waiting to be loaded full of coal and shipped to other countries around the world. Now, we're in the middle of the Great Barrier Reef here. This is the central zone, and these ships have to literally go through the reef to get through the passages. But this isn't even the largest coal mine in the world yet. That's still to be built at Abbott Point if the government gets their way. But if we've already got this many ships travelling our shores, we're facing a fossil fuel crisis. It's like humanity is addicted to a deadly drug, and the sooner we get off it, the more lifespan we'll have. Ain't gonna let nobody turn me round, turn me round, turn me round. Ain't gonna let nobody turn me round. I'm gonna keep on walking, keep on talking, marching down to freedom's land. Ain't gonna let no police line turn me round, turn me round.
that case, Matthew, you're under arrest for trespass. Okay.
Stop yourself, Matthew.
Yeah, why are you doing this, Matthew? Thanks, mate.
I'm here to stop Adani and political corruption. It's time.
Well, good day, Noosa. The crew maintain the life support systems of Spaceship Earth. They are the bees, the trees, the worms, the sharks, the Great Barrier Reef, the whales, the dolphins, down to the krill, down to the smallest bits of plankton that give us the air that we breathe. They regulate our climate. They take care of our waste. They provide us with the food we eat. We're just the passengers. The problem is we're killing off the crew.
Now, this issue is not new. It's a known issue. It's been going on for decades, the deterioration. It's not just one cause. Coal's our major issue.
We knew our role and our responsibility. You know, we could go out hunting and gather and all that sort of thing, but we also have to put back and give back to Mother Earth.
Australia is going through one of its worst droughts on record. Droughts will get deeper, longer, sharper, and then they take 25 million litres a day out of the groundwater. Over the life of the mine, it's predicted 400 billion litres will be taken out. Farmers absolutely depend on groundwater. Why are we risking that for one coal project that, by anybody's standards, is, you know, possibly not even economical?
We spend our days just living this way to keep the dream alive.
And stand on the edge of one of those pits and see what's happened. We can't let it happen again.
We are the only living descendants left on our lands. We welcome you in your intent to protect country, protect our lands, protect our reef, and protect our sacred waters.
Holding on the things that we saw. There was fire in the rain, it was fire in the rain, and we were black smoke. Holding on to the things that we saw.
They're not isolated groups, they're not isolated towns. That collectively there is so much good environmental work happening in Australia, not under any particular organisation, but just people with passion and a passion for life and their kids are standing up.
The law has never been lost. It's still in the land. It's still in the rocks. You know, we're the guardians to protect these sacred places, and it is our responsibility to do that. And that's just not us, not you, or anybody. It's everybody has that responsibility to protect this country.
We still custodians here, all of us. So if you feel it in your heart and you feel it in your blood to stand up and stop these things, step forward. That's your ancestry speaking. You are the next step.